This is Tell Me What to Read, the podcast of Booktopia.com.au. I'm Nick Wasiliev, and today I'm delighted to bring you a selection of Australian stories highlighting new releases in fiction. First up, Ben Hunter sits down with Hilde Hinton in the studio to discuss her brand new book, A Solitary Walk on the Moon. Then Ben sits down with Benjamin Stevenson to discuss his latest book, Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone. Check the show notes below for timestamps for all interviews, as well as links to all books mentioned. Now, over to our interview with Hilde Hinton, author of A Solitary Walk on the Moon.
Hello, I'm Ben Hunter, Booktopia's fiction category manager, and with me on the podcast right now is Hilde Hinton. She is the best-selling author of The Loudness of Unsaid Things, and her new novel, A Solitary Walk on the Moon, has already made it to the top of Booktopia's bestseller charts, and at the time of recording, it's not even out yet, so that's got to be a good sign. She's here at Booktopia HQ right now, where she's just been signing a massive pile of books. Hilde, thank you for giving me a little bit of time to chat.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So we've been signing these massive piles of your book together, and the majority of those books, they're going to go to part of this community, the Love Your Sister community or family, I don't know what to call it.
Village.
The village.
Yes, the
I
village.
love that.
Yeah.
Can you, for people who aren't aware of it, can you tell us what Love Your Sister is and what it's like being a big sister to Connie and Samuel?
Yeah. Well, Connie got diagnosed with cancer and set Sam the challenge of raising $1 million for cancer research, which he managed to do in our first year by riding a unicycle around the country. And when he got back, instead of congratulating him, she said, "What's next?" And and that was 10 years ago, and we're now $15 million. Has gone straight to cancer research because every donor dollar gets donated, no skimming, no admin. And it's just, it's been a hell of a ride. Unfortunately, Connie's not here anymore, but she'd be very proud of what we're doing and where we're at.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the village that's sort of surrounded us throughout the 10 years has been incredible. Just people out there. We go to regions, rural regions, cities, and nearly every family is touched by cancer in some way. And somehow we've sort of all banded together and offer each other support and friendship. And even though it's largely online, whenever we go anywhere, we recognise the people we've been talking to all this time, and it's just a fantastic community in itself.
A community of kindness.
Yeah.
I love it. As an author of fiction, it's a solitary profession, right? You sit alone and you observe and you kind of chronicle it in your own special and unique way. But the conversations and the people you and Sam have reached through this massive village, that's something different, and you must be getting feedback or touching people and hearing back about loudness of unsaid things. So is that different? Is that a unique perspective you feel you have?
Yeah, I certainly. I mean, I'm quite extroverted, and I love people, and sort of people recharge my batteries. So it is unusual to be riding on the side, and it is largely solitary. But it's fantastic that I get my fix of people out there, and I just love, because I'm a great believer in storytelling. I think it's really an important part of our community, because these days you get the government saying things like stop the boats and lock them up, and what we're missing out of all that is the actual stories of the people who are hopping on a leggy boat, the people that are getting incarcerated, and we're not hearing their individual stories anymore, and our empathy and our social responsibility is largely born out of story, and I think story is being shut down, and I just feel privileged to be able to be in the story space, because stories are more than stories.
Oh, I love that. The publisher, Blurb, we were talking about this before actually, it compares the novel to Olive Kitteridge. And having read that now, I get that a little bit. You have this character Evelyn, who has a very quiet existence in a very mundane world, but a very unique worldview, right? That we're just taken on a ride for that as a reader, and you have to just kind of digest that for a little bit. It's really different. It's really special. Tell me about Evelyn. How did you cook her up?
Yeah, I mean, she sort of. I wanted to write about a character that you didn't necessarily love, and that was difficult to get to know, and sort of had flaws and foibles, and sort of, because we all have all those things, and I just sort of wanted to focus on that side of her character before I even thought about her sort of more positive qualities. And I just fell in love with how unashamedly herself she is, how she sees the world, and as she developed and grew from the germ of perhaps having somebody a bit prickly for a change, you know, I sort of think that as a reader you probably get to know her in the same way that I did, because she sort of develops around your eyes, and you're watching everything through her eyes. And the way she sees people and judges them and tries to help them, you know, she's helpful, but she's just not helpful. You know, she's more of a hindrance than sort of a help. So you end up with all these conflicting emotions about this complex, difficult, prickly, but ultimately kind-hearted and hopeful woman who does her best for the people around her.
She's a problem solver.
She is a problem solver, yeah. So she owns the local laundromat in a strip of shops, and she tries to keep at arm's length from people. So she follows people home. She's not a stalker. She follows people home in case they ever need help. You know, there's a particular old forgetful gentleman that's always a bit grubby, and she follows him home so she knows where he lives in case he ever gets into trouble. She'll be able to help him. And by following people home, she inevitably finds people do need her help, and she strikes up this friendship and this sort of group of people that are all largely alone and don't have family support networks that we would think, you know, that we know of. And they sort of band together and form a sort of ragtag patchwork family. All through our Evelyn's eyes. Yeah, she brings people together.
That took me by surprise, this family that forms.
Yeah.
Because at the outset of the book, it felt like I was on my way to a really weird kind of caper, you know? You got this stalker, not stalker, running a laundromat in this town, and everyone has a little bit of a story behind what's going on. I thought, I'm in for a bit of a caper, but what it quickly evolves to be, and I didn't twig on this happening as a reader as it was as it was kind of unfolding. But on the other side of the novel, I put it down and I was close to tears. It's an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, which life is.
Yeah.
And I wanted to focus on people that you don't normally read about. There's a gentleman, Don, who works in the paint shop, and he's been largely invisible his whole life. No one ever pays attention to Don. And we all know people in our community that we walk past every day that you wouldn't even think to say hello to, but they're kind of always there. And I just sort of wanted to point out really that everybody has a story, and it doesn't matter who Evelyn comes across. Try as she might to stay at an arm's length. She ends up bonding with them and getting their story and sort of finding an existence with her. So it was really about trying to find characters you don't normally read about.
Other than Evelyn, I think my favourite character is Ben. I'm a Ben. I'm drawn to Bens.
Yeah.
Now, I have to ask you, you've described this to me before, that you live with a kind of an open house policy.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I feel like maybe you've come across a few Bens in your life.
Yeah.
So tell us about Ben.
Well, the house is called the House for the Temporarily Defeated. That's always been the name of my house for 25 years now. So Ben's an 8-year-old boy. His mother isn't naturally happy. She has some addiction issues. She's not a natural mother. She's doing her best, to her credit.
Yeah.
You know, she's trying. And Ben doesn't have anybody else really. He doesn't fit in at school. He's different.
Yep.
He doesn't play sport. He doesn't. He's just, I don't know, kind of like I was as a kid, I suppose, just that little bit on the fringe. And Evelyn, they come into the laundromat on Tuesdays, and Evelyn becomes quite close to the boy, and in turn,
He comes ready with questions.
oh yeah, I mean he's got natural curiosity, and it's nice that despite how sort of on the outside, how depressing his life looks, that he's still got that natural curiosity of a child, and the hope and forgiveness that comes with kids, and it's pretty hard to sort of get it out of kids. They sort of keep waking up every day with a cup of optimism, and certainly with the people I've had through my door over the years, you know, even young adults, you know, I love the way people sort of wake up, it's a new day, and start again with a bit of hope, and Ben sort of represents that.
He reminds me a little bit of I guess Eli is older in that novel. Ben's 8 going on 9. 9's very exciting. But he reminds me of Eli Bell in Trent Dalton's Boy Swallows universe.
Oh yeah. I hadn't made the connection. Yeah.
It's a compliment.
It is a compliment. It's
the best
actually
book.
a massive compliment. It's one of my favourite books.
What are your favourite books? Who do you like to read?
Yeah, well, I love that book. I love Bridge of Clay by Trent Dalton. I love Zaphon's sort of series of books. Unfortunately, he's recently passed away. That were all set in the cemetery of forgotten books. He's magical.
Bridge of Clay
knocked my socks off.
It was epic, but that was Marcus Zuzak.
Yeah, there wasn't a wasted word in that book. Yeah, I loved it. Gosh, I read so many books, it's hard to pick them out. But yeah, Bridge of Clay was my sort of standout from the last few years. But I also read a lot of crime, and I think what I love about crime fiction is not necessarily the crime stuff itself, but the way crime writers do geography and make you see a place is quite exceptional. So I love reading my crime as well.
You have your favourite books tattooed on your arm.
I do. Yeah, some of them are authors and some of them are single books.
Are you on there?
I have. Oh, how arrogant! I have put the title of one of my books on there. Yeah.
If you're listening at home, I'm looking at a whole upper arm sleeve.
A book stack.
A stack.
Yeah.
Stack of favourites.
I've got Elizabeth Jolly on there because she influenced me so much when I was an angst-ridden sort of 18 to 20-year-old. I found a lot of comfort in her storytelling. I didn't feel so alone. So I've got people on my arm that are from a long time ago that I haven't read for many years but had a big effect on me. Carl Hyacins, a sort of Florida crime writer who's... that the black humour in his stuff is super impressive. So he's on there for aspirational reasons because I like to think that I'm a bit funny in my books. I think my books are sort of funny, happy, sad.
Funny, happy, sad.
Yeah, I think
that should have been the blurb. That's perfect.
It should, yeah.
Funny, or just the title of the next one.
Yeah, funny, happy, sad.
Actually, that was something I wanted to ask. A Solitary Walk on the Moon is such a poem of a title.
Yeah.
How did that come
Well,
about?
that's really interesting because there's a scene where Evelyn's walking through a park and she feels she's not feeling terribly happy that day, and she feels like she's walking on the moon and feels very alone. And ironically, when my brother had a car accident and he'd just read this book 2 days before he got hit by a car, and when he woke up, all he could talk about was Evelyn, and he kept saying, she's on the moon with only one moon boot because the earth has cast her off. because that was the effect she'd had on him.
I love that.
Because it was the last thing that he sort of remembered before the crash. And so the title has multiple meanings for me, because Evelyn certainly feels not of this world, and certainly that's how Sam saw her, sitting on the moon with one moon boot. So, yeah, it's a sentimental title for me.
How is Sam doing? He's doing well
He's
now?
okay, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, he's a lot better.
And are you going to do the launch from the porch again?
We are.
Good.
Yeah, we're going to do that in April, and it's going to be really exciting. I'm very much looking forward to that. It's a really good way of touching base, and I think COVID's sort of open. I know we're all a bit sick of Zooms, but it's also opened up a whole line of communication for people who can't actually see each other face to face, and very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, it is exhausting, but it when it's done right, it can be really special.
Yeah.
Are you nervous about book 2?
I am nervous about book 2, because book 1, it didn't sort of matter how it went, because I was just so thrilled to be published. But I'm really enjoying what I'm doing, and I want there to be a book 3. So
the only thing stopping a book 3 is an author writing book 3.
Oh, well, maybe. I mean, I've started.
That's great.
So yeah. I mean, I sort of think now that I've done this book, I feel a bit like a real writer, not just a one-off.
You are a real writer.
Yeah.
You are certainly a person who is full of stories.
Yeah, but like an actual writer.
Yes.
You know.
Yes, it
And
is
I've been
special.
reading books my whole life. I don't see myself as one of those people. So maybe.
You brim with stories though, and you've got many to tell, it seems. What do you hope to achieve with this one? What do you want people to take away from it?
Well, just to take note of just to look a bit harder when you're walking down the street, and before you walk into your house at night, because you've got neighbours. We're part of a community. There's people everywhere. Everywhere has a story. Everyone has a story. It doesn't hurt to stop and say hello, because you never know what you're going to get. And it all starts with an open face and a smile. You might see that person again and strike up a conversation. And, it's just a book about people, and that we're all in this together. And we all have ups and downs, and inwards and sideways and outwards, and roller coasters, and and we all have happy, sad, funny, and I'd just like to see a bit more togetherness. And I think ultimately the book's about togetherness.
That's brilliant. I can't think of a better place to stop. Hilde Hinton, thank you for being with us today and signing stacks of the thing. And writing stacks of the thing. I hope you write stacks more.
Thank you.
If you want to get a copy of this book, A Solitary Walk on the Moon, do it now. It's available from Booktopia, as are all of Hilda's books. And they are both, the ones that have been published to date, published by Hachette.
Now, over to our interview with Benjamin Stevenson, author of Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone.
Hello, I'm Ben Hunter, Booktopia's fiction category manager, and today with me on the podcast, sitting across from me in person, which is so good, is Benjamin Stevenson. Benjamin Stevenson is an award-winning stand-up comedian and author. He's also a bit of a book industry insider with experience in big publishing houses and literary agencies. And his new book is called Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone. And it is touted to be one of the biggest breakout crime novels of the year, both in Australia and abroad. It's been picked up by publishers in all different territories and translating into different languages, and there's an HBO adaptation in the works. It is very exciting stuff. So Benjamin, thank you for... I'm humbled you're spending time with me.
Oh, thanks for having me in. It's a pleasure to come in, in person. We've done some stuff on Zoom in previous years, but yeah, it's great to be here.
Welcome to the HQ. This book, Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, is different to the prior two novels from yourself. It is wild. So what has inspired this right of turn?
Yeah, well, I guess, so first of all, to preface that it's fiction, it's not a memoir, just in case people are listening and thinking, what kind of confession is this book? But I've always written crime, and then during the pandemic, I just felt like reading sort of dour crime novels was just a bit depressing. We're all inside, and then crime novels are, I believe, they're about what people can do to other people. Like, which situation can you put and what choices will those people make in those situations? And I was thinking about how to write my next book, which became this book. And I just sort of thought, well, maybe I want to do something a little bit more fun. That's a little bit more fun for me to write, just to sort of get out of my own head during the lockdown. And then I started dipping back into Agatha Christie and the classic mysteries. And I thought that the genre of thriller and crime has changed so much from back then, where it was very firm. There are very firm sort of rules on how to do it and what you can and can't do. That has been successfully broken now, especially through the 2000s, like by hiding things from the reader and hoodwinking the reader. And I was like, well, what if I play it absolutely straight and go back a bit? And so I decided to sort of try and write an Agatha Christie sort of inspired novel that also had a really sort of modern, unique sensibility. And then at its heart, it is still a serial killer mystery whodunit, but it's just a fun one.
It really is, and you're right. It is the polar opposite to the thriller genre of popular accord, which is the unreliable narrator. You have a narrator that speaks directly to the reader and says, "Now, I want you to think of me as a reliable narrator." I found that wild and refreshing.
Well, that was the key launching off point for me, was the unreliable narrator. And I say this loving so many of those books, but I just wanted to do something different. And I thought, well, what is the opposite of an unreliable narrator? It's a reliable narrator. And this is the weird thing. What is the craziest thing that I could do in a crime novel? And the craziest thing that I could come up with was to tell the truth the whole way through, play it absolutely straight. And I thought that shouldn't feel as unique as it is. But then when I was writing it, I'm like, it has come out as unique. So in this book, in the first chapter, the narrator, who reads a lot of crime, he says, I know the rules of crime fiction and I want to be a reliable narrator, as you said. And then he tells the reader everything that's going to happen in the book in the first 2 pages. And then the book sort of plays along with that, and you as the reader sort of catch up to what he's told you, which spoils the entire book, but also increases the mystery of the entire book. So by telling you what's going to happen, you have no idea what's going to happen. It's like a magic trick.
I love that. It is incredibly clever. You've almost undersold it, but it is. It blew my mind, and I was the whole time just reading along with this book. I was gobsmacked. I was like, this is just ferociously clever, and I'm one of those people who is pathetically outwitted by all crime novelists, and you both outwit me, but you also welcome me into your arms and say, it's okay, Ben. I got you here.
That's what I exactly wanted to do. I think that, again, just talking about those modern crime novels, right? I feel like modern crime novels are built to play the reader, right? The reader is being played by the author. Whereas my book, I feel like the reader is playing along with the author. And so that makes you feel clever when you get something or when something's resolved. And it's the difference between that came out of nowhere and I see what you did there. And I think I see what you did there is so much more satisfying than that came out of nowhere, even if it's a huge twist. And so pulling all those threads together, particularly at the ending, and hopefully getting people to go, oh, that's what everything is. I hope is what comes from that. So that's what I was trying to do. Make it fun, make the reader feel clever as they're playing along.
It is definitely achieving that. It is so fun. Are you a scholar of the crime genre over the ages? Because there's this beautiful classical reference, particularly to the golden age authors, Agatha Christie you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I love I love lots of crime. I've read crime my entire life, so really sort of soaked in everything. But I'd say there's plenty of people that are more widely read than I am. And I wanted to make sure in this book, though, that I was appealing to sort of the mainstream tenets of it, so not really leaving people behind by getting too inside it. Although the rules in the front of the book are Ronald Knox's, and he's slightly less known than, say, Agatha Christie. And Ronald Knox wrote a list of rules.
The 10 Commandments, you call them.
The 10 Commandments for detective fiction that my narrator follows along in the book. But also in terms of the genre, like the stuff that I love is in terms of the modern stuff, I'll start that again. The stuff that I read the most, Australian fiction, over the last sort of 20 years, Peter Temple's The Broken Shore is my favourite novel. I love all the Australian Roald Dahl, Jane Harper, Chris Hammer, I love all of that. And then in terms of the modern stuff that's more playful, Anthony Horowitz, Richard Osman, Lucy Foley, the film Knives Out, like those things all sort of collate into what I was trying to do here. So it's almost more looking at other people who read the genre as well as me reading the genre when I was putting this one together.
I have to ask also, so you've got the 10 Commandments. I'm just opening up the novel. There's also in the very front page, and yeah, my proof copy, it says earmark here, which I like.
Refer back often, yeah.
There's a membership oath of the Detection Club, 1930, a secret society of mystery writers, including Agatha Christie, G.K. Chesterton, Ronald Knox, and Dorothy L. Sayers. There was a secret society of these Golden Age authors?
Yeah, I mean, I might be putting it on a bit to call it a secret society, but they had a club and you had to be, approved to get into the club. And they all talked about how to write crime, and they had a little membership oath, which basically the gist of it is that you can't cheat. Your detective can't know anything the reader can't know, and he can't make up the answers on the spot. But I just love the idea of all those writers sitting down in a room and just sort of chatting about how they put their works together. I mean, we do it now. It's always a thrill when you're at a writers' festival and you find yourself at a bar with a couple of crime writers and everyone's like, how do you do this? How do you do this? How do you do this? But to think that they did that back then with Agatha Christie is so cool, and so I had to put that in the book.
You should start a club for Australian crime writers.
I should, the Detection Club, yeah.
You can argue about, what kind of, I don't know, Does Chris Hammer like Jats or Clicks, or what kind of cheese does Jane Harper have? I have to ask this question. If you were murdered, who would you want to solve the case?
No one in my family. I feel like no one would really take up the mantle of detective. Who would I want to solve the case? That's a good... I mean, the boring answer is a competent policeman, but a police officer. But I'm trying to think of... I want someone with like a wild brain who can piece together, because I assume if I've been murdered that, it's a good murder. Like, it's not like I got mugged in an alley and I just died. It's like there's a message written on the wall, and something's not right, and what happened here, and what does this mean? And there's a book with pages ripped out and all these clues everywhere. So I'd love Anthony Horowitz to be on the case of my murder. Him and his detective Hawthorne can come along.
I love that. Do that. I have to ask this as well. Can pigeons be awarded for medals of service?
Absolutely. Yeah, so there's...
Is that a real thing?
Yeah. There's a pigeon in the book who has a war medal. It's called the Dickens Medal, and it goes to animals who have shown bravery in conflict. The most famous is a cat who got given a medal for clearing out a rat infestation on a ship. But I just thought it was so cute, and I had this sort of pigeon in the book, and I thought, I'm going to give him a medal. I think he wears a medal on the cover, actually. So yeah, I just thought I found that fact, and I thought, this has to go in a book. This is fantastic.
And here it is. There's a lot of talk in this book about mobile phone battery and the incoming storm, and how hard it is to get out, and the tropes of setting up that kind of closed room drama. And there's a library, and they're like, we have to announce this in the library. Does modern forensics and the internet and mobile phones, have they really? How has the genre kind of survived that?
Well, I think the key thing you have to do is you have to take the phone out. Like it's probably more in horror than crime, but any horror movie where somebody has a mobile phone, you know, the movie ends, the book ends. So you as an author have to grapple with this kind of access that everyone has to each other in order to sort of get them on their own to develop the plot in the way you need to. But certainly in this book, like, you know, they're stranded at that snow resort and the snow's coming in. But they're also, as the narrator makes pains to point out, they're not stranded. Like, they could just leave. So I'm making fun of the sort of isolated, we're all locked in, we're all trapped by the storm kind of thing, because they could just get in the car and drive down the hill. But they're all like, no, we want to solve it, or we want to stay for these reasons, or someone doesn't want to get their hotel room refunded. So they're trapped, but in a sort of a clever, unique way. And then, I always point out what everyone's battery percentage is whenever they pull out the phone in the book, just so you know that I'm playing fair and that their phones aren't going to run out of battery at an inopportune time, purely for plot reasons.
How does it feel to be just breaking out with just such a wild success right now? This book has really skyrocketed you. As someone who you're an insider in the industry, you work at Curtis Brown. There's you know how the sausage is made to a great degree. It blows my mind that you would still want to do it because you know how horrible it can be and how hard it is and how unlikely what has happened to you is happening. How does that feel? Now it's working.
Yeah, I mean, it feels amazing. It feels like a dream. It feels like a huge relief. But most of all, I think that there's two elements to it that I've been thinking about. And because I see how the sausage gets made, I know how rare things like this are, and I know how lucky I am. So I've just been able to, at every point, just feel really grateful for everything that happens. Every new country that comes in, I think we're up to 22 now. And, everyone I met talking about the television series, I'm so aware that it's not an everyday kind of thing, and that for some reason I've written this book at the right time, where people, I started this book 2 years ago, and I didn't know whether this kind of lighter crime would fly. And then Richard Osman came out when I was halfway through this book. And I remember talking to my publisher, and they're like, "Have you read the Richard Osman? I think this might be what you're trying to do." And I'm like, well, that's fantastic, because you can't write to a genre curve. By the time you've finished the book, you'll have missed the curve in publishing. So just very grateful that it's happened. And then also, this is my third book. I'm very much a working writer. Like, I write books, they sell fine, I have readers, it's great. But the average writer income in Australia is what it is. You can look it up online, and because I don't want to get it wrong on the podcast, but it's an example of the 10-year overnight success. Like I have been writing, and I've been just a jobbing writer and working writer, and writing my books, which I'm very proud of and were published very, very well. And then for this one to just sort of tip over on that seesaw, like I've done enough that it just tipped. It feels like everything's happening all at once, but it's also, it's really nice to sort of know that the work over the last sort of 10 years has paid off.
Yeah, fruitful. And those two thrillers that have come out prior to this one are really good books. Like, listener, go back and read them as well. I want to ask you one more thing, which is something that just I struggle with a lot. And you are an insider in the publishing world, and you seem to be a real expert on crime. And I just don't know how to talk to authors about crime books on a podcast without ruining the book.
Yeah.
We've been doing this. It's going okay. I feel. You having a good time?
Yeah.
We get good. But how do you do it?
How do you talk to crime writers? That's a good question. I mean,
right.
We're like any other writer. I think a lot of crime writers think so heavily about the structure of their book and hiding the endings. But especially these days, like, you know, you've got twists baked in. It's not just who the killer is. You know, there's certain elements of twists to novels that sort of come 100 pages in, or you know, it's. I empathise with you. How do you interview Christian White? You know, you can't say anything past page 7, or you're sort of spoiling one part of the intricate puzzle. So I'll say flattery. Just flatter them. Most crime writers. I'm sure most writers, but I know most crime writers would love that.
I'm good at flattery. I'll stick to that. I have a silly challenge for you now.
Sure.
Do you ever think about crime genres? And something that I have a personal affinity with. I'll confess I've never read them, but working online, I come across these titles and these covers all the time, and they blow my mind. It's the cozy crime, particularly. There's a sub-genre called the culinary cozy, which is very popular in
Murder
America.
in a bakery kind of things.
Exactly.
Yeah, America loves those.
They really do. And the titles are just excellent. Now, you're a comedian and you're a very sharp crime writer. So my challenge to you is I'm going to give you some titles, and I want you to just pitch me a murder. All right?
Sure.
So the first one is On the Lamb, a kebab kitchen mystery.
A 42-year-old kebab chef is found skewered in his own rotisserie oven by an aspiring competing kebab truck owner. And the competing kebab truck owner is the lead suspect, and he has to clear his own name.
Love that. Okay, number 2.
I haven't done that quite right, because cozy crime's nowhere near as gory as people getting skewered in rotisserie ovens. It's very much a bloodless knife in the back, in the back room of the kebab shop.
Let's shake it up. I'm down for that. My second one is Against the Claw, a lobster shack mystery.
Greg Gregson has had a hand injury when he used to be a lumberjack, and they ran out of prosthetic hands, and so he has a lobster claw as a hand, and he also works at the lobster restaurant. And one day his hand falls into the bisque, and a guest is poisoned by the lead in it. And then he has to get away.
That's a lot. All right. That's involved.
Yeah.
You're good at this.
Well, you got to have traumatic backstories. That's essential for any crime novel.
Okay, one more. Pleading the Fish, a seaside cafe mystery.
Pleading the Fish. What is the Fifth Amendment?
The Fifth Amendment, I'm pretty sure, is you can't testify because you don't want to incriminate yourself, so you plead the fifth, or in this case, the fish.
Plead the fish. Okay. This has a supernatural bent to it. It's a detective who can talk to fish, investigates the death of a local fishing mogul, but the fish refuse to talk. So he has to go live with them and earn their trust to get their confession.
Wow. Well, thank you for playing along with that. One more question. Would you ever set a murder in a book distribution warehouse centre in Western Sydney?
I think you can set a murder anywhere. My next book is set at a writers' festival, which you might be the first person to know that. So I'm doing a little bit of the publisher insider stuff, but I don't want it to be too exclusive. You know, there's a publishing industry that really happens behind the scenes, which is actually quite dull. And then there's the publishing industry that you often see in films and television, which is more exciting. So you got to try to find the line. But yeah, no, definitely. Well, maybe there's a distribution warehouse can pop up in my next one, seeing as there's a lot of writers as characters in the book. So
I want credit.
Yeah, okay. Royalties. Talk to my lawyer about that.
Bleed the fish. Benjamin Stevenson, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
You can get a copy of Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone from booktopia.com.au right now.
Thanks to Hilde Hinton and Benjamin Stevenson. You can find links to all books discussed today in our show notes, or head over to booktopia.com.au. With the arrival of Easter and school holidays, we'll be going on a podcast production break for the next 4 weeks until the resumption of regular episodes on May 18th. However, in that time, we'll be dropping one special episode on April 27th. With the arrival of the Brisbane Writers' Festival, which will run from May 3rd to May 8th, I'll be sitting down to chat with authors Annabelle Abbs and Christine Moonans, who will both be featuring in the festival. So please keep an eye out for that. Until then, we hope you have a safe and happy holiday break. Thanks for listening, and never stop reading.